Okay, so hello Nándor, my name is Raewyn Stephen. I will be your interviewer today. So I'll just start off with a couple of questions over there. So we'll start off with tell me about yourself and why you're here.
Sure. Okay, so my name's Nándor Tánczos. I'm tangata tiriti in Aotearoa. So to tell you who I am, on my mother's side, my mother's from South Africa, Cape-coloured South African, descended from the indigenous people of Southern Africa. And so my ancestral mountain is Uriaikama. It's like known as Table Mountain. So cool. On my father's side, my father's Hungarian, so descended from the Magyar people who've occupied the Carpathian Basin for about 1,000 years, and my awa is the Tissa. My family's lived on the banks of the Tissa for the last 1,000 years or so. My father left Hungary in 1956 when they had an uprising against the Russians who'd occupied Hungary since the Second World War, and the people were under bitter oppression, and so they had a revolution. My father was a young man involved, had to flee for his life, and became a refugee, went to England, met my mum who'd lived South Africa as they were constructing apartheid, and so they met there, and I was born in England, myself and my brother, and came to Aotearoa when I was about 7, so I've been living in Aotearoa since I was 7. Been in Whakatāne about 5 or so years, but my wife's from Murupara, so Ngāti Manawa lady, and I've always been drawn to this area. I love living in Whakatāne, Eastern Bay area, and I'm standing for council. So I'm an elected councillor now, and I'm standing again because I think that Whakatāne and the Eastern Bay, we face the same kind of challenges as towns and cities all over the world. We've got climate change, we've got social dislocation, we've got economic fluctuation, all these different issues, but I believe that we have the ability to thrive in a really unique way. I think we've got everything we need here to really show the world, to be a living example to the world of how to live sustainably and with community and in a way that fulfills us as human beings and builds our connection with each other. And that's what life's all about, eh?
All right, I love it. So what are you passionate about? Thought you already gave that question, but yeah.
Well, a lot of different things, but in terms of say my council work, the number one thing for me has been climate change. So last election, I raised the issue of climate change. I was really the only person talking about it, and council had a little bit of stuff in their paperwork, but no one was really paying it that much attention. So I've been really strong on pushing that. So recently we've established a climate change committee, which I chair, and we developed these climate change principles, which have just been out for consultation. You may have seen those. And we had a lot of young people actually, kind of had their say on that. So that was really good. And I know that, with the climate change, the climate strike and all this, I know that for a lot of young people, it's really top of the mind, this stuff. So we've developed these principles, and we're driving change through the council as an organisation, trying to support a discussion in the community, because it's such an important issue, and it's we've known about this since the 1800s. Scientists first started telling us about the greenhouse effect. Yeah, it's not a new thing at all, and the evidence has been growing. We know that the oil companies have deliberately suppressed the information about climate change. This has come out in the media. Their own scientists told them 30 years ago about climate change, and they suppressed it. They spent a lot of money to try and muddy the water and confuse people. But now the evidence is so clear, you look at what's going on in the world, we can see temperatures rising, we can see increased storms, all of these kinds of things. So it's these massive challenges. And we have to take action, we have to do that now. But the other side of it for me is it's an opportunity, because a crisis is just an opportunity, an opportunity to do things better. And, I think this is an opportunity for us to take stock and say, what are we really doing as a species, as a civilization? What are we doing here? And we have to rethink our relationship with the planet, with Papa Tuanuku, and we need to rethink our relationship with each other, and we need to start saying, what kind of lives do we really want to live here? There's more wealth in the world today than there's ever been before, and yet some people are working longer, harder than they've ever worked before. Some people got no work and no money. and really we need to rethink how we organise ourselves, and we have to say, what makes life worth living? And to me, at the end of the day, it's about our relationships. For me, spending time with my family, spending time with my friends, that's really what gives me quality of life. Everything else is just what is it that supports that to happen,
That's so cool, I love it. Alrighty, so what is your fondest memory?
My fondest memory, I had a great childhood. I grew up in a really loving family, and I think probably what flashed into my mind when you asked that question was I grew up I lived in Takapuna for a while when I was a kid, and we used to go to Lake Pupuke, and we used to catch eels, and we used to have a couple of kayaks, and we used to kayak around, and it was that, I think, just like spending, again, with my family, doing stuff that was just kind of fun and hanging out in a natural environment. It's probably the best memory I've got.
That's so cool. I love that. Final time's the best time. Alright, so who is someone you admire or look up to?
It's hard to choose someone. I think of people like Nelson Mandela, who's from my mother's homeland, or Petufi Shandor, he's a revolutionary poet from from where my father's from, or people from Aotearoa like Te Whiti Rongomae, and there's so many people, and the thing is, and a lot of the time we kind of focus on the negative side of things, but when we look at the world, even today, like so many people who really inspire me, even like I know you just had Tony Boynton on, people in our own community who are like, talking about bringing community together and talking about restoring right relationships, and I'm struck by how many people are working to make the world a better place and how few people are working against that. And what that says to me is we have the power to make the change.
That's cool. Alright, so tell me about your youth, because you grew up over in England, was it?
Yeah. So I lived in England till I was about 7. Then we came to Aotearoa. So most of my memories are from Aotearoa. I did go back and live in Hungary for a year when I was a teenager. My parents sent me to live with my grandparents. So that was really interesting because I went on my own. My parents didn't come with, and none of my family spoke English. A lot of Hungarians speak English now, but at that time it was still behind the Iron Curtain, and kids at school, they learnt Russian. They didn't really learn English. So I was in a full immersion Hungarian language environment. I went to school there for a year, and that was really powerful for me because it was living in a communist country, and it was easy to see the downsides of the American empire and what that meant in terms of the wars being fought by America around the world and continue to this day around oil and things like that. But it's easy to romanticize kind of the socialist world. But I lived in Hungary and I saw what it was like in that world, and it wasn't very good either, And it was a really important thing for me. I suppose it woke me up to the realization that there's no kind of side that's all good, There's no such thing as they're all good and they're all bad. Everyone's got something of value to contribute, whatever their perspective. And I think what we have to do is find what's the best out of what everyone's got to say, and then when we come to that understanding, we can build something that's unique to us out of our collective wisdom and goodness, So for me, that growing up, that was a big thing, and and again, my father suffered under a socialist government. My mother suffered under a right-wing nationalist government in South Africa, and but another thing I think is that my parents were people who really encouraged conversation and knowledge. So we would, on the weekends we'd all sleep in and then we'd get up, we'd have a lazy breakfast, and we would talk, and my parents would talk about what was going on in the world, and we would. So I kind of grew up learning to analyse the world around me and try and understand what was going on and be aware at a young age. Yeah. And I really value that because, in this world, we're presented with a really superficial view of what's going on, and we have to learn to look below the surface to see what's really happening. And that, I think that's a really important thing.
Alright, so do you think if you grew up in different circumstances, whether or not that would have altered your childhood and how you are today?
Oh, look, absolutely. I was a member of Parliament for the Green Party for almost 9 years, and I was the justice spokesperson, and I used to advocate for marae-based justice and restorative justice and things like that. And one of the things was we'd have these debates in Parliament about crime, and law and order, and you'd get these MPs and they'd stand up and they'd be like, oh, these scumbags and all this kind of stuff. And for me, it's like I was deeply aware that the blessing I had growing up in a loving, happy family, and if I'd grown up in different circumstances, I could have been one of these scumbags that they were so-called scumbags they were talking about. Everyone, we have our own internal guidance, but we're also products of our environment. And some people, if you grow up in a home where there's domestic violence and there's alcohol and drug abuse and these things, it's very hard. It's very hard to get ahead. I'm really aware that that I've been, I'm really aware that I've been blessed, and I can't look down on someone because they haven't been similarly blessed. And if we have a blessing in life, our obligation, I think, is to reach out and try and help other people, who didn't have that same benefit.
That's so awesome. I love that. So, what were your goals and aspirations when you were younger, and how did you achieve them?
Well, when I was in Hungary, I was 14, and I decided I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to write about what was going on in the world, tell people the truth about what was happening. And I held that for a long time. And in fact, when I finished school, I went and studied journalism. I went through the course and everything, and then right at the end of it, I dropped out because I kind of came to the realization that actually journalism isn't usually about telling people the truth. It's the job of the journalist is to sell advertising to readers. The whole media works on selling advertising. That's how it pays its way. And so the journalist is there to write stuff that draws people to the advertisers. And it was a bit of a cynical kind of wake-up call for me, I suppose. So I never did achieve that. Well, actually, no. Years later, I have actually edited kind of magazines and things, but they haven't, not like professionally working in a paper. It's been like community stuff that so I'd spent a long time working for Normal, National Organisation for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, and I used to be the editor of the Normal News. So we'd put out a magazine and we'd tell people about, we'd write stories about cannabis law reform and and that kind of thing. So.
So, who are the youth of Kopeopeo to you?
So what I understand the youth of Kopeopeo is a bunch of people who care about young people and who care about Kopeopeo and bring that together. So young people such as yourself and other people supporting who are taking really practical steps to make this a better place. So I know that there's been the water fountain just over there that you guys have got in, which is, that's phenomenal to have, so there's that and a mural that's on the back here, and I know there's plans for other murals and other gardens and stuff. And so I think it's fantastic. I just see this, and like what we're doing today, I just see this taking off, and this is awesome. And what it says to me is that if people are able to work together and be clear, have a focus, and be clear what they want, you can make anything happen. But you got to work together. Eh? Yeah.
I love that. That's so cool. So, what do you think it's like to be a young person in Kopeopeo?
I think probably the issues for young people here are probably pretty similar to the issues for young people in most places, in that young people are largely an afterthought when it comes to how our society organises itself. So there's not a lot to do if you're a young person. I know a lot of, so around any town, a lot of the social activities around alcohol. Well, if you're young, you don't have much, you can't go to bars and clubs and things like that. What else is there to do? There's no real spaces or venues around here for young people. We're a small town, so we don't have a lot of exciting, rock climbing and, all those kind of facilities. And that's just because we're a small town, And I think that's the challenge is there's a couple of them really, isn't it? There's not much to do, and young people are not particularly heard. But again, I think, as I said before, Youth of Kopeopeo is an example of how I think if young people can work together collectively, be clear what you want, and work together to make it happen. I think there's a lot of support actually for young people, but it's not, you've got to reach out and find it. I think there's great opportunities to do really good stuff.
Alrighty, so what is it like to be a person your age in Kopeopeo?
I really love Kopeopeo actually. I got to say, Whakatāne is funny. You've got like the kind of the business end up the Strand and all that, and it's like a centre of activity, and then you've got Kopeopeo, and it's a completely different centre of activity, and it's kind of there's a, every community's got its issues, but also there's a sense of kind of, I don't know, there's a sense of community here. It feels like we're all down home, a kind of relaxed out kind of place, and I like hanging out here. I love the Sally Army shop. I got a few of my clothes from here.
Alrighty, so do you recognise the different stereotypes here in Kopeopeo as well? Sorry.
How do you mean?
So like when you said that you have like the different, like the business end over here and how you have Kopeopeo, can you recognise the different stereotypes? How we don't have a much variety of shops, whereas and the Strand, like people are very limited, like all the way down like Awatapu, they really can't be bothered walking all that way, so it kind of limits the amount of time that they would have. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean definitely. You've got that end of town is where all the development takes place, and on the one hand, you can kind of understand that if you're a shopkeeper, you want to be around all the other shops because that's where everyone goes to shop. So you want to kind of be where people are already going, and then that kind of can build on itself and create an exclusive kind of zone, but what that means is that communities don't have easy access to what they need. So, if you go down, you mentioned Awatapu. If you go down to Awatapu, there's not a shop. There's not even a dairy in Awatapu. Hey, the facility, there's no facilities there. We were trying to organise, because I'm part of the Awatapu Otama Koko Kaitiaki group, where we're trying to restore the mauri of the lagoon and the reserve. And we've been working on trying to, and we got the council to start to do maintenance on the playground because it's been really neglected. So we got that on the council work program. We've got we did that. They did that work where they pulled a lot of the weed out of one end of the lagoon, and we got a wetland planting thing. We just got some funding to do some wetland plants and stuff. So we're trying to restore the mauri, and we've been trying to engage with the community. I mean, we're made up of community and supporters, but trying to engage with the wider community to go, what do you really want to see happen around the playground, around the lagoon, around the reserve, and in the wider community? What do people want to see? And there's not a single hall where you could have a meeting or call a hui or anything like that in Awatapu. And it's like, and I think this is true of a lot of places. We've lost these spaces. Like I was saying before, if we're focused and we work together, we can make things happen. But it's very hard to work collectively if you can't have a hui anywhere, except in someone's lounge, and you can only fit a few people, So I think it's a real issue is the lack of these kind of, like both shopping and those kind of facilities, but also just what I would call kind of civic space, public places where people can come together and talk about what they want to see happen as a community.
That's so cool. Thank you. So, at night, do you ever feel threatened and need someone to be with you to feel comfortable? around Kopeopeo?
I've never personally felt threatened in Kopeopeo. I have felt threatened in a couple of parts of town occasionally at night, where especially some of the people are a bit out of it and they kind of lose control, and they become, you've got to be careful with people like that. But I've definitely heard that other people have felt unsafe around Kopeopeo. And yeah, well, there's so many things that lead to community unsafety, and there's things you can do, like you can have more cameras and surveillance and all that kind of stuff, and there can be a place for that. But again, I come back to, for me, it's about building community. It's about building collectivity as a community, and our togetherness and our care for each other. I think the biggest strength we have, whatever our challenges, whether it's climate change, whether it's fear of safety issues and things like that, I think the strongest thing we've got is that having a community where we know each other and we can help each other out if we need to.
Thank you. So, what do people say about Kopeopeo, and what do you say about Kopeopeo?
Well, I don't know, different things. I mean, as I say, I've had people say, I don't always feel safe there, and then other people, that's where we hang out, and what do I say about Kopeopeo? I don't know, time to go to the pack and Steve. I don't know. I said, well, maybe what the question's getting at is, I think this is a really important part of Whakatāne. I think it's got its own kind of āhua, and I think it's got a community that is based around here, and I think I'm keen to see what we can do to support Kopeopeo to really be the best of itself. Yeah.
That's so cool. Thank you. So, what do you think the young people of our rohe want our decision makers to know about them?
I think, well, the sense I get, so I'm involved with the youth, I'm the council rep on the youth council, and I've been involved with a few different activities and projects, and I suppose the thing I hear more than anything is that young people want to be involved. They don't want to be spoken to, they don't want to be spoken at, they don't want to be talked about, they don't want to have pictures of themselves in glossy brochures but not be mentioned in the text of the book, or the thing. Young people, I think, want to be involved in decisions that affect them, probably more than anything else. And I really support that. And that's why it's great to see what you're doing here, actually, because it's about, to me, it's like these elections are really important, and people don't usually understand the importance of council elections and what councils do. And I think anything that kind of lifts the lid on that, and it kind of opens up the veil of what council really is, and involves especially young people in council elections and in decision making more generally, I think it's really, really critical.
Thank you. That's so cool. So, what do you think our young people feel should be important to our decision makers? I think you kind of already answered that.
Yeah, well, as I say, involving young people, I think, is the bottom line for across the board of whatever it is. But I suppose the other things and we really talked about it, but I see young people getting really active around climate change and understanding what a big issue this is for your futures, and demanding action. And I really supported that climate change strike. I really support seeing young people on the streets demanding change, because the people have been making decisions for the last few decades. They haven't been listening, and so we have to demand change, demand action. So I think climate change is really important. And I think young people are really aware of that broader sustainability stuff too, that we need to change our relationship with the environment, with the ecology. And I think young people see that really clearly, because it's the world that you're inheriting.
That's cool. Thank you. So, last but not least question, do you think it's important for everyone to vote?
Yeah, look, really important. For a long time I didn't. When I was young, I come from politically a kind of anarchist background. I used to have a billboard outside my house at election time saying, "Don't vote or vote for nobody because nobody cares." And that was my attitude for a long time, I didn't vote. None of my friends vote. None of us, And over time, I come to see that that's not true. I think a lot of people. So first of all, if you don't vote, no one's going to care about you because they, you guys, you don't vote anyway. Yeah. And even if I annoy you, it's not going to make any difference. You don't vote for me anyway. So why, So just on a kind of purely about changing the system and changing who's in there and changing the voices that get heard in there, it's really important that young people vote. If you want the council to to listen to young people and to be interested in what young people have got to say, you've got to vote in councillors who listen to young people and are interested in what young people have to say. If you vote in people who don't do that, they're not going to change. So you've got to vote in people who are the kind of people you want to see around the table. But the other thing I'd say is voting is once every 3 years. Voting is not enough. Voting is like the minimum. Voting is the least you need to do. It's what happens between elections that's important. It's actually having your voice all the time. So, if you're going to have a climate change march, have a march, go down, have your say, demand change. If you wait till election time, nothing's going to happen. You've got to be making your demands. You've got to be demanding to be heard all the time, whenever you get the opportunity. And that's what. To me, democracy is not about voting every 3 years or whatever it is. Democracy is about having your say over the decisions that affect you.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much. It was such an honour to interview you and have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Lovely.
It's lovely.